Hi, friends. Welcome back. Come follow me with fair, faithful answers to New Testament questions. I am Jennifer Roach. I am not in my regular place. I'm at the airport waiting on a delayed flight. I thought I would be home in enough time to record this, and I'm not. So here we are at the airport. I'm recording. The sound is going to be terrible, and I apologize for that. You're going to hear airport announcements. I will probably re-record this episode at some point this week. So if you see this Monday or Tuesday or something, consider how lucky you are, because I'm probably going to take this down and put something up that sounds decent. But here we are. Okay. Oh, life. I think I grew up in California. I have a bunch of girlfriends that still I'm in touch with from there. We had a great girls' weekend. It was really, really fun. It was totally, absolutely worth doing. And that means you got to record in the airport. Here we are. Anyway, today we're talking about priesthood. This is the first of 3 episodes where we're going to talk about that. We're in Hebrews. We're following the Come Follow Me readings. We're in Hebrews this week and next week. Both of those weeks are on priesthood. And we're in James, where we're doing something different. And then we're in 1 Peter, that's the priesthood of all believers lesson, which we absolutely need to cover that. But we're sort of building up to that. So that's where we are. That's where we are in the text. And that's why I'm in the airport. I'm sorry, you guys, it's the worst. Okay. The word priesthood is a very loaded word. At least when you're trying to talk about how different groups use that word and the situations between Latter-day Saints and evangelicals. This can go in about 8 different directions, and there's a lot of talking past each other and miscommunicating up. We use one word that means about 8 things. Today, the part that we are going to talk about is why is every eligible man or teenage boy in our church ordained? And in most churches, that's not the case. I actually cannot think of a single Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox church where they do what we do, which is sort of ordain most of the men in the congregation. If you know of one, put it in the comments. I would love to know. I can't think of one off the top of my head. But it's a puzzle to evangelicals. Like, why are you doing that? Why is everybody, all of the men are ordained? I think you'll be surprised where we go with this and how much we actually really have a lot in common with them right here on this issue. We just use different words. Okay. I'm on my laptop and I'm in the airport, so this is going to be on. All right. Most evangelical churches are not going to use the word priest, except in the context of priesthood of all believers. They swapped out priest for pastor a long time ago. It's more casual. It's easier for people to understand. Like, that's absolutely 100% on brand for them. So they swap out priest for pastor. We're talking about the same category, at least traditionally. Today, we're not talking about what makes a priest. How does one become a priest? What is all like the process part? We're not talking about any of that. I'm literally just talking about the category of priest. In traditional Christianity, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, it goes congregation. A priest or a pastor is above them. Above him is a bishop, and above the bishop are various degrees of archbishops and other things above him. That structure has not been true for evangelicals for decades. They started to walk away from that. I mean, even in the 50s, but certainly by the 60s, it had a lot of steam by the 70s, and by the 80s, nobody is thinking about church structure in that way. When they swap out priest for pastor in an effort to be more casual, they had to do this kind of retooling, restructuring, but that takes time to figure out what it's going to look like. And there have been a few iterations of it. I'm going to give you my best impression of the current version. So much better. So for evangelicals, they have a pastor for the congregation. But that pastor used to get support from a bishop who was like the priest in charge of a bunch of other pastors. So he would be the bishop over an entire city. Maybe there were 10 churches in that city, and he would be the bishop to all of those priests. Well, we cut all of that off. But there does seem to be some kind of natural pull towards that structure. Because here's what happened is members at an evangelical church are talked to and taught that they are the ministers. Right? Every member is a minister. We might say every member a missionary. They would say every member is a minister. But their minister is a minister, and there are two different types of ministers, right? So in essence, what happens to the pastor is he, without knowing it, without anyone putting the language around it, he actually is in the role of bishop, overseeing an entire congregation of ministers. I don't, if you're an evangelical and you're watching this, I would love to just hear your opinion on that. When I was first investigating the church, it was so confusing to me of like, why are you calling the senior pastor a bishop? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. You can't change the definition of works. That's not what we're doing in our church, right? Our bishops are called bishops because they oversee a whole bunch of ministers, priests, we literally call them priests. Obviously, women get included in that too, and people who do the work of ministry. He is overseeing them. Evangelicals have switched to the same system over time, not deliberately. They didn't plan it, but that is where they have ended up. The pastor figure is now the bishop figure. The members are now the people previously called pastors or priests. The only difference between how this part of their church is structured and how our church is structured is that we have formalized it and they haven't. It's kind of invisible to them. They don't really talk about the process in this way because they don't have the same categories. When I say we have formalized it, there's qualifications, there's things that you have to do if you want to become a priest. There's ceremony, there's ritual around that, there's laying on of hands, there's all these things. Whereas in an evangelical church, you're just a member of the church and you just automatically are a priest, a minister, priesthood of all believers, whatever. And there's no formalization around that. There's also no requirements around that, except maybe faith in Christ and a church membership. But I think you can see, like, what we're doing is actually the same thing. And that is a fascinating conversation because when you look at them from the outside, it seems like two totally different systems, but they're not. We're just using different words for them. And we have structure around it and they don't, but you could probably say that about most things. As it turns out, this might be a fascinating conversation if you wanted to talk with an evangelical friend or family member about what things are not so obvious that we actually do have in common. Like we have Jesus Christ in common. We have a lot of stuff in common. Most people would not look at our structure of priests and say, oh yeah, that feels really evangelical. And yet here we are, because it kind of is. We end up here deliberately. They ended up here by chance. I do hope that clears up a little bit of the language around all of that. We're going to need that as we're kind of building these next 3 episodes. It's shorter episode, you guys. I'm at the airport. It is what it is. I hope that helps you understand at least one of the ways in which we think about this differently. Next week, we are going to finish Hebrews on priesthood, go to James, and then go back to 1 Peter, talk more about priesthood. I'll see you then.